playing the game alone and loving it. It's sometimes a little buggy, but hey, it will be solved with upcoming updates. Enjoying the heck out of this game since beta, and I have nothing but smooth sailing on PC. Game very fun, but only if you play with others. Of course, there are some bugs that need to be fixed, and they will be. The game itself was great, full of enemies and quests. It never gets boring. Majority of people have no idea what they are talking about. I'm excellent if you have a bit of fantasy. You deserve the death sentence. You know, the gaming industry is in a really weird and just sad place right now. Ubisoft is forcibly ramming NFTs down people's throats, and EA and Activision, alongside every major company in our industry, are literally being bombarded with lawsuits left and right. I thought I'd take this time to tell you about indie games. See, I didn't know what the fuck they were. As a dumb 13-year-old, I thought that indie meant Indian, and I thought that indie games are Indian games, like Bollywood. Fun times. Now, naturally, after a quick Google search that came later on, I found out that indie games meant independent games, as in games made by a small group of people with a very tiny budget. And I disregarded them as, you know, these little gimmicky fun games. I played a few, like Papers, Please. That was a really fun one. Highly recommend, 10 out of 10. But I never really knew what an indie game could be. And then the Game Awards 2020 came along, and we all know how that one went. Best action game, Last of Us 2. Best family game, Last of Us 2. Best game of all time, Last of Us 2. But amidst all the commotion and the Twitch chat spamming rigged, this came up. I lost my fucking shit. Unsurprisingly, I overdosed on Hades for the next 3 weeks, and boy was it beyond insane. Oh, by the way, IGN gave it the Game of the Year award, unlike... Now, I could honestly sit here and talk about this game all day, but I think I'll move on, for now. I had then decided that I needed to try more indie games, and so I proceeded to do what any self-respecting gamer boy would do and venture into the depths of demise known as Steam to look for some more cool titles. Bad idea. Bad fucking idea. What the fuck? I then stumbled upon Hollow Knight? Oh right, I've seen this game before. Alright, I guess that's enough indie games for now. Okay, maybe just one more. Look, this one looks interesting. I'll try. Okay, what about this one? Alright. Okay. Why am I paying these fuckers again? Look, this video is supposed to be about indie games, but I'd like to momentarily bring your attention to a slightly different subject. Money. We all know that to actually make a game that doesn't end up as a mess that smells like dog water at least, you need money. But how much do you actually need? I guess we could say that the more money you have, the better the game turns out, right? I mean, look at Rockstar Games. They are arguably among the best studios that exist today, and their library of very impressive games evidently speaks for itself. How much money do game... What the... 265 million... 370 million fucking... Let's look at a game with much less quality. What the fuck? $100 million for... this. Okay, maybe it's a special case. Let's try a game that's good but more mediocre. Also 100 mil. Oh, what about God of War? Surely that would be way more Okay, what the fuck is going on? Do I dare do the... What the fuck? No, I know it's a great game and all, but come fucking on. Meanwhile, Doom over here only cost about. Now look, all these games are incredible, but my guy, look at Hellblade. Now naturally you may be tempted to inquire, well, where the fuck does all the money go? You see, when you start looking at a video game as less of a passion project and more of a business investment, the picture suddenly becomes way clearer. Much of the time the developers realize that the game is probably going to be a dumpster fire, and in that position delaying or even cancelling the game may simply not be a viable option. I've already mentioned how much money goes into these projects, the investors that pay these amounts and expect their money back and then some. As a result, executives resort to spending that budget on marketing their upcoming disaster of a game, using tactics such as hiring Hollywood actors, using social media influencers, showing unrealistic vertical slices, and even fake cinematic trailers. I'm looking at you, Ubisoft, you fucking cunt. Let's take a look at some juicy examples, shall we? Remember Anthem back in E3? The game looked extremely promising. Well, my guy, at that point even the fucking developers didn't know what the game was. What they showed was a concept build meant for an executive.
2012. Well, pre-production, which is where you're concepting and iterating and going back and forth and stuff like that, ended in 2018. 2018. They had one mission developed at the start of 2018 for Anthem. That means that Anthem as a game was in full production for about 12 to 16 months.
Which is crazy.
But you know what? There's a much better example of this. God deserves to talk about. This game had arguably one of the worst launches in history, driving it to the point where it literally had to be yeeted off the PlayStation Store, and yet with the power of fake-ass trailers and John Wick, 8 million juicy pre-orders. Sometimes a game may not be all that special, but investors overpay in the project and expect a dumb amount of money back. Hitman had this problem, and this documentary by NoClip hit the nail on the head.
So 80%, we estimated that 80% would be the low entry point, but the volumes will be higher, much higher. And there will only be 20% of those paying $60. But the percentage was, the distribution was opposite. It was 80% full price and 20% only coming in. Now,
and was that 80% less than you would have wanted as well?
Well, the volumes were much smaller, right? The strategy did not work, much smaller. And this is where the first nervousness of, Square Enix. And we had like Hitman 2 in production as well. It's a massive investment in building the whole digital platform. We had something else in the works as well, and the studio was 180 people, and we were, and a historical catastrophic start commercially.
Finding a game idea that is actually cool is tough. Finding people that you can afford to help you make that game is even more tough. And finding a way to make people notice your game is probably the toughest part. The luxury of cool, over-the-top trailers is simply not a viable option for a game whose budget is less than a fraction of a typical AAA game. Instead, these developers tend to be much more aware of how their money is spent. Remember, the game needs designers, artists that can produce assets in both 2D and 3D, writers, musicians, and sometimes voice actors to spring life into their world. Then they need programmers to make sure that their playable character doesn't fucking T-pose everywhere. Indie devs cannot afford mocap sets and photorealistic graphics. They instead have have to rely on eye-catching art and unique graphical styles. Games like these won't have 50 plus voice actors, so writers need to also find workarounds to make sure that they effectively tell their story as efficiently as possible. Game dev is extremely difficult, time-consuming, and just overwhelming. Most would try it for a week or so and then quit, and for a good reason. But when you see such little flowers bloom, it really makes you think, who knows? Maybe one day I'll make my own game.